let's see here. Looks like we have a... We were going live for Governor Gary Herbert's address at 4, which is about 10 minutes from now. But it looks like the live feed has been hijacked to a national feed instead, because we've got the White House press room being set up right now. So please be here, ready to watch in about 10 minutes. And we'll have our... you'll have our live analysis and whatever presumably President Trump has to say, in addition to whatever Governor Gary Herbert has to say. So again, we're just waiting on presumably the president's live stream to start, and then hopefully we'll switch to the Governor Herbert's remarks, which is why we're live today. So yeah. Feel free to leave some comments, questions, hopes, concerns in the chat box by commenting on the post on my personal Facebook or through Periscope or YouTube. Totally up to you on how you want to watch this live stream. Making sure we're getting this in the best quality possible. So while we're waiting on the live stream from the president to start, I want to give some people some news. So on March 15th, a Catholic priest named Father Giuseppe Berardelli passed away in the town of Lovere, just outside of Italy's hardest city of Bergamo, from COVID-19. Now, Father Berardelli gave up his ventilator so someone else could use it. In fact, that someone else, he didn't even know. He just gave up his ventilator because someone younger needed it, which is a bittersweet thing, you know. It really is. It's beautiful that the man was willing to fight for someone he didn't know. It's tragic that it cost his life. In other news, Newsweek found that 1 year of U.S. nuclear weapons spending would provide 300,000 ICU beds, 35,000 ventilators, and salaries of 75,000 doctors. And that's actually a Newsweek headline. From the source is the International Campaign to Abolish Nuclear Weapons. Ooh, we've got Secretary of Education Betsy DeVos up there. They're waiting on some other people. Probably the president. We'll see. And there's still no audio. Give me just a second, everybody. Can you guys hear anything? Because I can't hear anything off the president's live stream. looks like it's getting started. While we're still waiting, let's look at some more news. Four major banks have temporarily suspended mortgage payments during the coronavirus pandemic. This is in California. Governor Gavin Newsom announced on Wednesday a break for homeowners. California leaders secured some sort of deal with four major national banks to temporarily suspend home mortgage payments for those affected by COVID-19. And here's the president, everybody. So hopefully the audio starts soon. I'm going to refresh the stream. And now there's an ad. Sorry, everybody.
Possibility of a statewide stay-at-home.
There we go.
We are understanding very specific directions are coming along with expectations for all of us here in Utah. We will bring you live next as it happens.
The 1 million mark since March 13th.
It's our semi-annual flooring sale and clearance at Carpet One Floor and Home. Save $100, $250, even $500 store-wide. Features soft, flush, ultra-tough, and waterproof oat by Resista Carpets.
The one store for your perfect hardwood, carpet, laminate, vinyl, or tile.
That the magnitude of this stimulus will even meet the moment. I certainly have strong points of view that there'll need to be more in the future.
It's our semi-annual flooring sale and clearance at Carpet One Floor and Home. Save $100,
So
$250, even $500
President Trump is
store.
broadcasting at the same time as Governor
High blood
Hebert.
pressure is known as the silent killer because there are no symptoms. It can lead to heart attack, stroke,
So,
and other cardiovascular
We're going to watch the president and then we'll
see if
switch
you're at
over to
risk,
Governor
visit your
Hebert.
healthcare provider. For more information about high blood pressure, visit checkyourhealth.org.
Out that we have to produce large numbers, but we've been able to do that, and we're going to be doing a lot more. This invocation of the DPA should demonstrate clearly to all that we will not hesitate to use the full authority of the federal government to combat this crisis. We thought that we had to deal with, as an example, General Motors, and I guess they thought otherwise. They didn't agree, and now they do. They do agree, and able to do that, and I think we might be able to pull it, but we let them know the way we felt, and they can't be doing that. Get to the bottom line, and quickly we will do what we have to do and immediately exercise all available lawful authorities to get the job done. This afternoon I also signed an executive order investing, and very, very strongly investing, the Department of Health and Human Services and the Department of Homeland Security with the full authorities available under the Defense Production Act to respond to the outbreak of the terrible virus, the invisible enemy, as we say. My order also establishes that Peter Navarro, a very trusted person from the White House, and he's done an incredible job for me in terms of negotiation, in terms of understanding where the world is going economically. But my order establishes that Peter will serve as National Defense Production Act Policy Coordinator for the federal government. That's a very important position, more important probably than it's almost ever been in our country. And so I want to congratulate Peter and his family. I know he's going to do a fantastic job. He's been doing that job over the last few weeks. Peter is a PhD in economics from Harvard, has a master in public administration from the Kennedy School, also from Harvard. And he's a tremendous guy, and he will do a fantastic job. And I'd like to maybe ask, before I continue, Peter to say a few words, please. Peter?
Thank you, Mr. President. And of course, you know the Harvard joke, you can tell a Harvard man, you just can't tell them much, right?
You can't tell
So Anyway, on a serious note, let me just give you a little idea of the Defense Production Act and why it is so important. We are engaged in the most significant industrial mobilization since World War II. We have a wartime president fighting an invisible enemy, and we have the full force of government coupled with the full power of private enterprise bearing down on this problem for the American people, sir. What we had to do today with President Trump's order with respect to General Motors, I want to give you a little background on that. We need industrial mobilization to make adequate ventilators, particularly in the very short run, to help the people of New York, Detroit, New Orleans, Chicago, Denver, Seattle, all around this country as this virus bears down. And the ventilators really are the most important thing for patients who become most seriously ill. They are literally the lifeline for people. And I've personally been working with FEMA, and I've been working with HHS and over 10 ventilator companies, making sure we can get what we need as quickly as possible. And virtually every one of those companies has been cooperative, patriotic, moving in Trump time, which is to say as soon as possible, sir. But we did have a problem with GM and Ventec. On the one hand, we had Ford and GE moving forward on a similar kind of project, patriotically moving as fast as possible. Over the last several days, we ran into roadblocks with GM. We cannot afford to lose a single day, particularly over the next 30 to 60 days. So,
and everyone remembers, Senator Sanders called on the executive branch to invoke the Defense Production Act weeks ago. And Trump said he would after pressure from Senator Bernie Sanders and other governors.
Today, sir, was the right day to do it. Thank you, sir. Thank you,
and good luck. My administration is marshaling the full power of the American government, and we will do that, and that's what we've done, and we will continue to do it until our war is won. Economic, scientific, medical, military, and homeland security. All of this to vanquish the virus. We are working to sign contracts immediately with the major ventilator companies in the country, including GE, Philips, Medtronic, Hamilton, Zoll, RedMed, Hillrom, and Vyaire. These are all companies that do this, great companies. The FDA will be reducing and waiving unnecessary regulations in order to get this done. We're going to be of certain, let's say, barriers to speed.
Regulations that ensure quality, President Trump?
They've been making
regulations that ensure safety and sanitation? What kind of regulations, President Trump?
Under the normal condition that you would be, regular times, 29,000 ventilators are distributed in the United States each year. In the next 100 days, well, first of all, we've already delivered thousands of them. But within the next 100 days, we will either make or get in some form over 100,000 additional units. And I guess to put it in other words, in the next 100 days, we'll receive over 3 times the number of ventilators made during a regular year in the United States. And that doesn't include all of the thousands and thousands that we've given to the various states, a lot of them. We delivered thousands, as you know, to New York, and they didn't know they got them. And then we also had thousands put in a warehouse, and that was also for New York, and they just found out that they were there. So we have to make sure that when we deliver things, they get distributed. Earlier today, I spoke to the CEO of Boeing, Dave Calhoun, and Boeing will be producing and donating face shields to help our medical professionals on the front lines. These are actually pretty intricate in terms of the plastic and the quality of the materials. They're important. They've got to be
They put the pressure on GM because GM raised their prices.
Thousands of these a week. They've already tested the production, and they're ready to begin producing all of these shields. That's the plastic shields that go over the face. Well, Boeing is also offering us the use of their, what they call the Dreamlifter cargo plane. It's the largest plane in the world, and this is sort of a picture of it. They called up just a little while ago, and that can sort of take anything. That's the biggest in the world, and they're letting us use that for the distribution product all over the country, especially the heavy product or large quantities of product.
How much of that $500 billion
And
stimulus
Boeing
did you have to
will
give
dedicate
them,
up to
President Trump?
3 planes to the mission of flying medical supplies anywhere we need it. Each plane can carry 63,000 pounds of cargo per flight. That's a lot of cargo. I also
He's just
signed an
grandstanding,
executive
guys.
order giving the Department of Defense and Department of Homeland Security the authority to activate the Ready Reserve components of the armed forces. This will allow us to mobilize medical, disaster, and emergency response personnel to help wage our battle against the virus by activating thousands of experienced service members, including retirees. We have a lot of people, retirees, great military people. They're coming back in who have offered to support.
So they got out of the
nation in this
military-industrial
extraordinary
complex.
time
Now
of
President
need. And
Trump
they
is
come back
forcing
in. They
them
don't
back.
say how much. They don't say what are we getting paid. They just
Interesting.
want to come back in. It's
But okay.
really an incredible thing to see. It's beautiful. This afternoon, I also signed into law $2.2 trillion in urgently needed relief for our nation's families, workers, businesses, and Americans of every race, color, religion, and creed. And the 2.2 trillion goes to 6.2 trillion, depending on need. So it's the largest bill ever signed, and not just emergency relief, but of any kind. We've never signed a bill of that magnitude.
And Sanders made that one better. If you're unemployed right now, thank Sanders for the benefits in that bill. $600 extra a week, which is $15 an hour for a 40-hour week, on top
if you look at Congress,
of your state unemployment benefits for 4 months. If you're unemployed because of this, thank Sanders for amending that bill to have that.
And 96-0 in the Senate for the largest bill in the history of our country. That's pretty good. And I want to thank Republicans. I want to thank Democrats for coming together for the whole of the nation. And this is a great thing, a great victory. This is going to save companies that are incredible companies, but that are going to need some help because of what happened. A month ago, they were outstanding.
Oh, so the soldiers he's calling are still on an Army Reserve commitment.
And so we'll help them out. It's thousands,
most
and
likely.
millions of jobs. Millions of jobs.
Most of them are.
And I just want to thank everybody.
They're still receiving benefits from the military.
That includes the people standing with me right here.
They're Ready Reserve,
The
so he's
legislation
not forcing
extends a
people
vital
back in.
lifeline to American
He's
families
calling
and
on people who
American
have
workers
committed.
with
That's a
job
big difference.
retention loans for small businesses, and a big focus of the bill is small businesses. They're really they're the energy. They're whatever you want to call it in terms of our nation. They push. People have no idea how big a factor Peter can tell you the small businesses are in this country from an economic standpoint, from a job standpoint. We expand the unemployment benefits for workers very substantially and direct
Thanks
cash
again to Bernie Sanders, everybody. He's the reason those unemployment benefits exist.
It also provides a massive increase in funding for hospitals, for the disaster relief fund, and critical supplies, including masks, respirators, and pharmaceuticals of all types.
Ready Reserves get no pay and no benefits, however.
As you know, we're working on vaccines. We're getting some good response, and we're working on.
So they're working for free, I guess.
And we have some very interesting things happening. This afternoon, Apple launched a new tool created in partnership with our task force, the CDC and FEMA. Any individual who is concerned that they might have the virus can now download the free.
All enlistments in the United States militia have now been called on by the president without pay and benefits of the military to help address this crisis. He's literally sending them to the slaughter of the COVID without pay or benefits, everybody.
Whether they should get tested or not. And again, we only want people to get tested if we think they need it. In a few moments, Secretary DeVos and Secretary Perdue will discuss new partnerships with the private sector that are providing meals to millions of students while schools are closed. They've both been incredible, the job they've done. Appreciate them very much. We're grateful for the assistance of Niran Chaudhary, CEO of Panera Bread Company. They've been so incredible to us and to the people of our country. And Denton,
if they're called by the president, there isn't always a choice. They are compelled, not asked.
They're going to speak.
these ready reserve soldiers.
I've been awed and inspired by the American people more than anything else, more than anyone else. Americans of every walk of life have followed the guidelines, shown incredible compassion, and sacrificed greatly on behalf of their fellow citizens. I want every American to know that their selfless and heroic actions are saving lives, and I want them to know, and I've said it before, that I'm very proud to be their president, very proud of the American people. My administration is actively planning the next phase in an all-out war against this horrible virus. We're now testing nearly 100,000 patients per day, more than anybody in the world. And we have now, as of even a couple of weeks ago, tested more than any other country in the world. And our capacity continues to grow. Widespread surveillance testing will allow us to monitor the spread of the virus, and we're doing that quite accurately. And Deborah and Tony will be speaking about that, and coordinate with the states to contain new hotspots as they arise with a targeted, fact-based and data-based approach. It's all data-driven. This surveillance testing will soon enable us to publish updated guidelines for state and local leaders. We want every county and region in the country to have the on-the-ground evidence that they need to determine the mitigation measures that are right for them. Each location is different. Some are very, very different. Some are day and night. Some are in great shape and some aren't in great shape. And we'll be able to have very accurate information very shortly. We already have a lot of that information. America is bravely battling this pandemic through cutting-edge science, medical innovation, and rational, deliberate, and determined vigilance. No effort will be spared in winning this war. We're going to win the war. Hopefully we're going to win soon and with as few lives as possible lost. You see what's going on all over the world. You see the lives. You see Italy. You see Spain. You see all of these countries going through so much, going through such hell. And we're all in very strong communication. I can tell you our professionals are dealing with them every day. Many of the countries. So many countries, but many of the countries we're dealing very directly and closely. And we're going to be in very good shape in terms of certain equipment that's very hard to get, very hard to manufacture. At the right time, we'll be distributing that.
So a lot of this equipment is reimbursement, and it can't combine with FEMA assistance. It's either HHS assistance or FEMA assistance.
And it's a terrible thing. But he's going to be great. I'm sure he's going to be totally great. But they want ventilators. Italy wants ventilators. Spain wants ventilators. Germany wants ventilators. They're all calling for ventilators. Well, we're going to make a lot of ventilators, and we'll take care of our needs, but we're also going to help other countries. So I just want to thank everybody. I want to thank our great American citizens, and a lot of incredible things are happening, really happening, and too bad. I was saying before, we had the press conference when we had a signing ceremony. We signed the largest bill in our history. And I said, think of it, 22 days ago, we had the greatest economy in the world. Everything was going
Greatest economy for who?
The stock market.
For the oligarchs? Yes. For working people? No.
150th time during my presidency. And the world was looking good. And then we got hit by the invisible enemy, and now you have countries all over the world reeling. But we're winning it, and we'll be...
We're not winning. The only thing we're winning with COVID is the total number of cases, everybody. And we still have the fewest tests per capita, or one of the fewest test rates per capita, and we have the most confirmed cases in the world. That's what we're winning at, is getting people sick.
Very much more easily. So with that, I'll take a few questions. Steve, please.
Tell us a little bit about these negotiations with General Motors. What were they reluctant to do, or was it a debate over cost or profits?
Well, it got to be a debate over cost. We don't want to think too much about cost when we're talking about this. This is not cost. I wasn't happy.
Guys, here to President Trump right now, he's running to Biden's left. He's presidenting to Biden's left, just like he ran to Clinton's left. What we're seeing now is how Biden loses Trump in a landslide, much like Reagan won all but one state. This is what we're seeing. This is the framework that's being
They were
laid.
leaving one plant in Ohio. I love Ohio, and what happens? That became the story. Not that all these plants are moving in, but that you had one plant they were leaving. And frankly, I think that would be a good place to build the ventilators, but we'll see. We'll see how that all works out.
Trump cares now because he needs to be reelected, and he wants to cement his own legacy. Much like former President Barack Obama, who wants to cement his own legacy with Joe Biden, who will not win against Trump. He simply won't.
Mr. President, two questions for you. One on state quarantines and the other one on the search for treatment. The first one, over the last 24 hours, governors in multiple states, including Florida, Rhode Island, have issued quarantine orders for travelers coming from other states. Quarantine orders, yeah. And they are intercepting people on highways, at airports. They say this is at the recommendation of your administration.
We're going to transition away from President Trump's remarks and towards Governor Gary Herbert's remarks. He is live now as well. Give me just a moment, everybody. Thank you, everybody, for watching our live commentary on President Trump. Apparently, they were streaming Governor Herbert and President Trump concurrently, so we'll be getting to Governor Herbert in a few moments.
Document, this directive that we're giving out today, to really re-emphasize what are some of the common sense things we're already doing. So we hope, again, that you'll have this opportunity to take a look at this, and you can go to our webpage, coronavirus.utah.gov, coronavirus.utah.gov, to get information and links to this new directive we're putting out here today. Let me just go over some highlights of the directive. And let me just emphasize, this is something we expect all Utahns to do. This is a directive to people of Utah. It's something that will only work if we all participate and do our part. There's no exception to this. If people say, well, it's for everybody else but not me, all of us are in this together. And if we do this, we're going to come out, I think, in good shape over the next few weeks. Again, some of this is a re-emphasis of what you already know. Our directive, stay safe, stay home, which means that all individuals should stay home as much as possible. That ought to be the emphasis. Not to what can I do outside, but what do I do to stay home? Work from home whenever possible. I'll talk more about this in a minute. Encourage phone and video chats. We have the technology today to help us with communication. We're a social people, and so talking and communicating with people is an important aspect of keeping our sanity and our mental health right. We just need to do it in a more remote way. Self-quarantine. If you've been away or if you've been exposed to somebody who has COVID-19, then you should, of your own volition, self-quarantine. Again, help us stop the spread of this virus. We need to engage in what we call appropriate social distancing. That's the new part of our vernacular now.
Which is not enough, everybody. Not enough. According to latest data as of yesterday, I'm pulling up today's data, social distancing will kill 48 to 49,000 more people than a shelter-in-place order. Governor Herbert is complicit in 48,000 deaths by not ordering a shelter-in-place order with durable aid.
But we need to be just cognizant of the fact we don't want to have skin-on-skin touching.
3 months of shelter-in-place is 1,000 deaths, everybody. 3 months of social distancing, which Governor Herbert is barely pushing us towards, is 49,000 dead Utahns.
Change of your lifestyle for the next couple of weeks. Not attending any gathering of any number of people, except for members of the same household or residence. So if there's a gathering outside, we have people that inadvertently start to gather.
This is all reiteration of the same orders he's already have. He's done nothing new.
By plan, but if that happens, you shouldn't disengage and disperse the group so that we don't have gatherings of a number of people together. Again, doing this will help us slow down the spread. Again, some of the common sense things we've talked about with our hygiene standards, washing your hands, making sure that you sing happy birthday to your wife twice, it's 20 seconds to washing your hands with hot water and soap, hand sanitizer, avoid touching of your face, covering up your coughs or sneezes. This is transmitted, we know, more and more by goblets, water droplets, rather, and that's how the people, in fact, get infected. So covering your coughs and sneezes is very important. We should, at our
Again,
offices, our home,
COVID can travel up to 10 feet
high-touch
if it's
surfaces,
coughed or
buttons,
sneezed.
door handles, doorknobs, countertops, light switches, handles, chair rails. I mean, those kinds of things should be washed down and cleaned often. Last but not least, we need to help others. Sometimes we need to just remind.
What the heck, everybody? Sorry.
Do the elbow touch or a bow. We need to wipe off the surfaces. We've got too many people here to congregate together. Let's break in this.
Sorry about that.
Groups. We can all be a little bit aware and help others to become aware, and doing our part to help others practice these same principles. A second category, which we want to emphasize, that has not been emphasized enough, I don't think, in the past, is high-risk individuals. High-risk individuals are people.
This is all the same stuff he's been pushing.
That has underlying health.
Remember, everyone, of the global population infected, so far 1 in 21 infected are dying of COVID-19.
Visiting friends or family.
Social distancing is not enough. It's nowhere near enough.
Do not interact with other high-risk individuals. We have a lot of social gatherings where it's just senior citizens. That's got to stop.
And he forgets the immunocompromised, those with a disorder like celiacs, or any other disorder that results in an immune-compromised system. It's not just seniors that are at high risk. Certain people that have had certain infectious diseases in the past are at high risk due to a compromised immune system based on whatever disease they had. So yeah, this is...
Stay safe, stay home. That's the phrase.
Shelter-in-place order now, Governor Hebert.
As infrequently as possible. You need to plan your days a little more. If you have to go grocery shopping, that ought to be not an everyday occurrence. That maybe is a once a week. If you can't get out, then the neighbors or other people ought to step up and see if you can find ways to help your neighbor and those who probably shouldn't be in the grocery store or around more people. Help them by getting groceries for them, delivering them to their front porch, and ring the doorbell, and then stand back 6 feet as they pick it up. Children, that's a third category. Children, again, as you know, our public schools are closed.
And he's worried about skin-on-skin contact. He's worried people are going to have relations and there's going to be another baby boom. That's his concern, rather than ensuring 48,000 preventable deaths don't happen.
But again, children should not be attending schools outside of their home.
And he's only doing it for the next couple of weeks, whereas it needs to be a 3-month shelter-in-place order. Yes, Katie, yet another COVID in office. He needs to be replaced. Personally, I think he should be replaced by Zachary Moses, but that's just my personal opinion, not our editorial opinion.
That's a place where we can have enhanced transmission.
The stream appears to be buffering, everyone. Oh, the stream appears to be giving us an ad, which is dumb. I'm not going to subject you all to the ad. I think I can switch it to something else. And we're back.
Equipment and children playing there is a no-no. Food directives, let me give you some information on that. Again, we know that the hardest hit, probably of all, of our sectors of our economy is the hospitality industry, particularly restaurants and food opportunities. Again, we like to go out and socialize. That's really what motivates us to go out and eat. Maybe not the food so much as it is just...
This is the major announcement, everybody. Him rambling with 2 Utahns dead, hundreds infected, I believe at least over 100 infected, and him refusing to do what prevents 48,000 deaths. This is the announcement? Really?
Our schools are sending food home, and that's okay. But we just need to be careful in going to restaurants and dining in. We need to do more curbside and takeout. By the way, there is a challenge we've put out there called the 3T challenge. That means that all of us should try to find 3 times a week to do takeout. Go to your favorite place and get some takeout. That helps keep them.
Look at this. He's encouraging business revenue via takeout dinners rather than saving 48,000 preventable deaths by ordering a 3-month shelter-in-place order. If he ordered 3 months of shelter-in-place and ensured durable and financial aid to all Utahns, regardless, all of us, he would save 48,000 lives. But instead, his concern is that the restaurant industry doesn't collapse. This is disgusting.
6 feet from another person at all times. That's part of our social distancing. If you're going to exercise, which is okay, you go out and exercise, you jog down the road, walk around the block.
No, we need a shelter-in-place order, Governor Hebert, not a go exercise like nothing's happening order.
Distance of 6 feet from any other person, and not touching any common areas.
Not touching anything. I can live on services 17 to 27 days, everybody.
Something you need to be cognizant about and avoid. No congregating at trailheads or other outlets.
Try to do takeout 3 times a week. Is going to lead to more deaths and infections, everybody. It simply is. I'm sorry, but this man is an idiot. Or maybe he's not an idiot, but he's completely bought out if he's not an idiot. Or it might be both.
Travel, we need to think in terms of only what we would consider essential travel. Again, the thought process is what can we do at home without having to travel? But we know that there are times when you need to care for family members, health care issues. If you need to perform work and you can't telecommute or do your work from home, which we hope employers will try to accommodate.
We need a 3 at home, stay at home, 3-month shelter-in-place order. Now, not this rambling
engage in safe practices.
Social distancing that's going to lead to 48,000 more dead.
The coronavirus.
Appropriate social distancing means 49,000 deaths. A 3-month shelter-in-place order means 1,000 deaths.
You know, all kinds of issues regarding your health. Certainly those emergency services are okay. I've had people ask about leisure driving, and that's okay.
Leisurely driving is still a potential source, a vector of transmission.
Car and a gas tank full of gas, you can do that. We'd ask you again to think in terms of what can you do home first, but you can go on a leisurely drive.
This idiot is going to get 48,000 people killed at least. At this rate, with his advice, probably more than that, because this isn't even full social distancing that he's suggesting.
Access to those points.
No or limited action.
Is known as the silent killer because
no or limited action
can lead to heart attack,
is
stroke, and other cardiovascular complications. To see if you're at risk, visit your healthcare provider. For more information about high blood pressure, visit checkyourhealth.org.
Causing 67,000 otherwise preventable deaths, everybody.
Maybe it's a little bit of a challenge. We'd ask for them to find people to help.
Our governor is guilty of social murder, which is a form. Social murder is when you use policy that kills. And by prioritizing business and not even implementing a full social distancing order, this man is killing 67,000 people that could have survived.
People and a little less hectic and easier for them to get around. So, if we've got some programs we're gonna help for those who are homeless, and Pamela Atkinson's gonna help us coordinate those efforts with our homeless population, our friends there that need to travel from place to place to find shelter. We're going to try to do that to make sure that we don't.
How about more beds and reopen the road home, Governor Hebert? That's within your power.
Again, we have concerns with our airports. Working with the Salt Lake City mayor.
At least one TSA agent was infected and at work at Terminal 1 as of the 24th of March.
In the public areas of airports. If a ticketed passenger needs assistance, no more than one person may accompany that ticketed passenger. They can have a ticket, or it can be one associated with the ticket, but that's it. Individuals other than ticketed passengers must remain in their cars during a pickup and drop-off, which must be curbside or in the parking garage. That's what's going to happen at Salt Lake City International Airport. Part of this directive is to have us work with all of our commercial airports, say Provo or St. George or Ogden, and take a look at what's taking place with policies there and see if we can emulate this same thing that's happening in Salt Lake City. So we're going to make it a little more restrictive for those folks coming into our airports, particularly from outside of our state. I know outdoor activities in parks are a question, and certainly individuals may engage in outdoor activities. We've talked about walking, hiking, biking, running, hunting and fishing is okay. There are some public parks that will work. There are some playgrounds that won't work that are in parks. So you can go to the park, but probably avoid the playgrounds. Again, these all need to be consistent with having social distancing, physical distancing of at least 6 feet from individuals one to another. Again, no congregation at trailheads, at parks, or any other outdoor spaces. Again, there's a natural tendency for us to group together. That needs to stop. State parks.
You know what, guys? I'm going to turn off this propaganda now. He's going to lead to 68,000 more deaths, and I'm not giving him a bigger platform. We'll move on to our regularly scheduled content half an hour early, everybody.
State parks are available only to residents of the county in which the park is located.
That was disgusting, everybody. That was just disgusting. Governor Herbert's form of social distancing is known as limited action because of the additional go ahead and travel leisurely. Go ahead and take out 3 times a week. This is a limited action order, which means 69,000 Utahns will die. Or sorry, 68,000 Utahns at least will die according to current projections. And the numbers have only been going up. I've been tracking them day by day by day. And the numbers just keep going up. And yet, he's ordering this to preserve big business, which has wholesale bought our government in Utah, more so than in most states. And, you know what he's doing? This is what he's doing. He's preserving big business at all costs, including 67,000 that otherwise would have survived this if he had ordered a 3-month shelter-in-place order with durable financial aid and full housing for the homeless. If he had ordered that, 67,000 more people would survive this than are going to now. It's just disgusting, everybody. It's disgusting. And so I turned off his propaganda because he's on and on and on rambling about how it's okay to travel and go get food 3 times a week and do all these things that are, it's not okay to do, everybody. Do not listen to Governor Herbert. You'll get yourselves killed. So let me pull up our regularly scheduled content real quick. I'm pretty sure, actually, I want to be positive before I announce this headline because it's a big one. UK Prime Minister, known as the UK's Trump, has tested positive for COVID-19. The UK coronavirus rate of infection is doubling every 3 to 4 days. And so the UK and Boris Johnson has been accused of COVID-19 complacency. He's been failing to heed his own advice and contain the coronavirus properly. So yeah, he's yeah. However you want to say that, really, like he's. Do this real quick. Sorry, everybody. Alright, So that's one of our headlines. Again, keep commenting. Your comments help keep the show alive. Keep it fun. Keep it dynamic. And do all the things, please. Comment on Facebook or YouTube or Twitter or Periscope. If you guys would like me to bring back the governor's live stream, you can comment that and I will. But at this point, it's just nonsensical propaganda that's going to get people killed. So I wasn't about to put it on my platform unless I get overwhelming requests for that. In other news, Bernie Sanders is holding a live stream with doctors and nurses on the front line of the coronavirus pandemic at 7 p.m. Eastern. You can tune into that at live.berniesanders.com. There's an ad that people are wanting to get on TV, and while I'm not TV, I'm happy to display it for everybody. Just get our second display ready. Sorry about the delay here, guys. Got to patch the feed because I accidentally unpatched it. There we go. There we go. Sorry about that, everybody. Got the feed patch. So, oh crap, I touched my face. I'm gonna die now. Sally says you are exactly right. Our political leaders are corrupt and only care about their greed and else helping their wealthy corporate donors to keep getting wealthier. This is extra redacted because of capitalism. For those new to the show, all swear words I replace with redacted. If you want to see the swear word, look at the comments. Feel free to swear in the comments. I don't care. I'm not going to tone police anybody. But I don't swear, so I say redacted instead. So yeah. Sally's particular word choice rhymes with tucked. Like, I tucked my child into bed. I'll go that close, but I'm not going any closer, everybody. Feel free to call in live. Or whatever. Whoever calls in will actually be our inaugural call-in. We have still yet to have someone call in live. So that's, that's fun. I'd really like to see someone call in live. If you want to be the inaugural caller, feel free. There's the number. 385-715-NEWS. Let's see here. Keep the comments flowing, everybody. Again, I live on comments, so I live on your stuff that you say to me. I really do. 8 of the states that have stay-at-home orders, that was what Utah desperately needs to prevent 60,000+ preventable deaths, are on both sides of the one-party coin. So both Republicans, the ideological one-party coin, Republican and Democrat governments have both issued shelter-in-place orders. 8 of the states have Republican governors, 13 have Democratic governors. So it's still overwhelmingly Democrats that are doing it, the right thing here, but some Republican governors are doing it too. So that's interesting. Little factoid. Okay. In other news, I want to focus on some more local news. The Boulder Pines Apartments in Salt Lake City gave a typed out letter. I'm going to read it. It's disgusting. Enforcing rent for April. Ready? Quote, "Dear residents, although we are combating the COVID-19 virus scare, we want you to know we are still here and we care. A few quick reminders in case you forgot. First and foremost, we appreciate you a lot. Now this notice is silly since we tossed in a rhyme, but please remember to pay your rent on time. April 1st is when it's due, and come the 3rd we'll be looking for you-know-who. Pay your rent early, even if just by a day. If you do, I will enter you in a drawing for $400 off May. Our office services are limited, but you can pay rent by sliding it under the door. Contacting us by phone or email has been working so well. Thank you all for your patience and for being so swell." End quote. That was disgusting. Please don't make me do that again, everybody. I probably will have to. Landlords suck, but... To the tenants of Boulder Pines, I say, ignore your landlords, organize, and participate in the rent strike, please and thank you. That's what I say to you guys, please. The police showed up on somebody's doorstep at 10 p.m. and took her kids from her because she works in a clinic. Judge signed off on this order to steal her kids because she works in a clinic and exposure to coronavirus. Her ex has a history of abuse and have had protective orders against him. She also has no history of abuse and no history of neglecting her children, and yet Oklahoma County ordered that her children be taken away from her because she happens to be a first responder. Hebert is already done speaking, everybody, so I don't mind having, I hope you don't mind my having switched off him, his propaganda early. Let's see here. Again, for those who weren't watching earlier, 1 year and U.S. nuclear spending alone would provide 35,000 ventilators, 300,000 ICU beds, and the salaries of 75,000 doctors. We give up buying nukes for 1 year. 1 year. And we suddenly have a bunch more capacity to deal with this, but that's not going to happen because we need our endless wars to preserve corporate interests and corporate money. Unfortunately, our soldiers don't protect America. They protect America's corporations. It's really unfortunate. Now, I forgot to mention this. I am so sorry, everybody. That woman that works, that mother that works on a at a clinic and got her kids stolen, works on a reservation, lives on a reservation, which means this is more anti-native life and native dignity abuse of power by the United States. She might not be Native American herself, but she's on a reservation, so this is a blatant example of systemic racism. Systemic and disgusting racism, and tearing apart families. In other news, let's see here. I had some other news for us today. Sorry, everybody. There's a low-income relief program for truckers that's doing free meals and more for truckers. And what it is lowincomerelief.com/help-for-truckers. And a bunch of different companies are offering help for truckers nationwide. Bush's Chicken will offer curbside service for truck drivers at all 80 of their locations. You have to call them ahead of time and they'll arrange it. Comcast is offering free use of Xfinity hotspots. Domino's Pizza will deliver to truck stops. Love's truck stops are still open and are ready to serve drivers. And these are all really good things because truckers are the backbone of our supply chain. And if truckers stop working, although I think a militant trucker union was a really good idea right now. It is always a really good idea. If truckers stop working, everything comes to a grinding halt. So we need them to be delivering medical supplies. So they'd have to be selective in what they're militant about. But Meals for 18 Wheels is a Facebook group that's trying to connect drivers with nearby volunteers who can help them get deals. Pilot filing Jay has made adjustment. All self-serve food stations are closed and the showers are still open and cleaned after every use. Target distribution centers are allowing truckers to park, use the restroom, and eat a meal. They have asked all of their centers to provide water, snacks, and hand sanitizer free of charge for truckers inside their break rooms. A Texas Roadhouse will bring out food to truckers' trucks, which is pretty cool. In other news, I covered this briefly a different day, that an NHS doctor was evicted. That's the National Health Service in UK, because they're a first responder for coronavirus and the landlord didn't want to risk it, and was told to find an Airbnb. But other workers, there are interviews all over the place. There are tweets and screenshots and group shares all over the place of nurses and other first responders that are heroes of our coronavirus pandemic getting tossed from their homes by landlords that can't handle it. In other news, the stimulus check that is basically a early advance on your next year's tax return won't be sent to you if you owe child support. Back taxes and late student loan payments don't disqualify you, but back child support does. We need a national rent freeze and rent forgiveness. Landlords, regardless of how poor they are part of the capitalist class, not the working class. As they capitalize on the wealth produced by the labor of their tenants, there's still wealth siphons. Working class doesn't inherently mean poor. Bernie's a member of the working class. It means you have to sell your labor for money. And so in other news, this one's pretty huge. The campaign to lift U.S. sanctions on Iran, led by Senator Bernie Sanders and others, in terms of who's leading it here at home. It's Iran's international campaign, but Bernie Sanders has been leading the fight on that here at home. It has reached 100,000 signatures, and hopefully our government will stop sanctions. Sanctions are merely economic warfare, everybody. The EU is preparing to send more than $20 million worth of humanitarian aid to Iran, which does not breach our sanctions. So imagine how much more they could do if the sanctions were lifted. Just imagine. Iran is even willing to support us with medical personnel in our fight against the COVID-19, our being United States, pandemic, even though we've tried to declare war with them and we just assassinated one of their leaders, and we are been waging economic warfare on them on and off for decades and threatening them on and off in different ways for decades. They're still willing to help us out with doctors. That tells you what kind of country Iran is compared to the United States, and what kind of leadership Iran currently has versus the kind of leadership we tend to have. Just like that. In other news, a study has found, this one's kind of big too, that COVID-19 is not a laboratory, could not possibly be a laboratory strain. There's a lot of conspiracy theories I've seen of myself. I've wondered about it myself, that COVID-19 was engineered in the lab as part of a biological attack on some population in the world. But the scientific journal Nature Medicine is where this this study was first found. The novel coronavirus is not a laboratory construct or a purposely manipulated virus. The evidence shows that the researchers concluded, quote, "We do not believe that any type of laboratory-based scenario is plausible," end quote. The director of the National Institutes of Health said, quote, "This study leaves little room to refute a natural origin for COVID-19," end quote. Researchers did conclude that this COVID-19 strain is not a human creation because it does not share with other viruses any, quote, "previously used virus backbone," end quote. The study also found that it likely sprung forth from a recombination of a virus found in bats and another virus possibly originating from pangolins, otherwise known as scaly anteaters. And they think this because COVID-19, the novel coronavirus, is 96% identical to a form of the coronavirus found in bats. But it has variation that could explain what has made it so infectious. The mutation in surface proteins could have triggered the outbreak. While many believe the virus came from a fish market in China, that is also a misconception. It's got an earlier origin than that. Iran's president, I'm going to quote him here on his statement for sending the U.S. doctors. "These are times of brotherhood. The best way to overcome the new coronavirus is through unity. While other nations are bent on endangering the lives of their citizens, Iran is ready to focus its efforts on ending the pandemic." End quote. A bottle with a message inside from Germany was discovered in Cork, Ireland. That's funny, because the bottle had a cork. Cork, Ireland, after spending 19 years at sea. That's hilarious. A British man walking his dog on a beach in February discovered a message in a bottle at sea that had been at sea for nearly 82 years. The address was included, but when contacted, a new resident had moved in. That's hilarious. Bottles at sea, everybody. That's just hilarious. A study has found that 12% of at-home workers are skipping video due to a lack of clothes. Meaning, 44% surveyed admitted they dressed in more professional attire specifically for video meetings, while 16% said they had to rearrange their homes to look more professional in the background of a video call. That's hilarious. A New York donut shop is selling Dr. Fauci donuts. That's capitalism for you, everybody. Let's profit off a pandemic. Oh, that's gross. Well, yeah, it's gross. It's gross. AOC went into an explosive performance on the congressional floor the other day, and everyone should really be this serious about our broken system. I'm going to try to bring the second screen back so we can all watch it together. This will be my first time watching it. I've heard of it. I have a vague idea of what's in it, but I haven't watched it yet. So let's watch it together, everybody. It's a little blurry. Wait.
Fight for one of the largest corporate what did the Senate majority fight for? One of the largest corporate bailouts with as few strings as possible in American history. Shameful. The greed of that fight is wrong for crumbs for our families, and the option that we have is to either let them suffer with nothing or to allow this greed and billions of dollars, which will be leveraged into trillions of dollars, to contribute to the largest income inequality gap in our future. There should be shame about what was fought for in this bill and the choices that we have to make. What did the Senate majority fight for? One of the largest corporate bailouts with as few strings as possible in American history.
She burned them.
Shameful.
It is shameful. I agree with you,
That
AOC.
fight is wrong for crumbs for our families, and the option that we have is to either let them suffer with nothing or to allow this greed and billions of dollars, which will be leveraged into trillions of dollars, to contribute to the largest income inequality gap in our future. There should be shame.
We already
about
have the
what was
largest
fought for
income
in this
inequality
bill
since
and the choices
the period
that we
immediately
have to
preceding the
make.
Great Depression.
What did the
So there's that. Yeah, there's that. Well, everybody, it's 5 o'clock. 5 o'clock is when we usually start these streams, so I think we'll get some more viewers right around now. It's actually 4:57. I misspoke. It's nearly 5 o'clock, everybody. And I think we'll get some more viewers, maybe some more participants in the chat. We'll be willing to, you know, do this thing. I want to cover this again because it's important and because there's been an update. Tara Reade has come out with a credible allegation of rape against former Vice President Joe Biden. Now, Tara Reade has been trying to come out with this allegation since 1993, I believe, and has been stonewalled every single time. In 2019, she went to Time's Up, a women's advocacy network focusing on the Me Too movement, and they were told that, or Tara was told, her story could not be aired because Biden was a political candidate and that might threaten their nonprofit status. In reality, the manager of Time's Up's PR firm is a Biden advisor. So clear conflict of interest there, everybody. Furthermore, Yahoo News became the first mainstream media outlet to cover Tara Reade's allegation earlier today, but then they took the article down and moved it to their sports section. And then I'm double checking right now whether or not it's still up, because they moved it to their sports section of all things. Their UK sports section. Oh, nope, they took it down altogether. It's not in the UK sports section either. I just got a 404 error in the URL because they were hiding it. They're suppressing it from the website. So yeah, first, here's the proof that it existed on the Yahoo Sports site. Okay, everybody, if you want some proof, I will give you some proof. Yahoo.com right there. Here's a screenshot from sports.yahoo.com after they moved it, and a new link at uk.style.yahoo.com, which doesn't work. The page you're looking for isn't here. They've censored the story, not even a full day after putting it up. And here's the original link. Oh! They put it back up, everybody, but they're still taking down some of the links. like I said, it's a story they've been trying. Tara Reid has been trying to tell since 1993, and Yahoo is the only. Only whatchamacallit, that mainstream media outlet that's even bothered to cover this so far. The President Trump told U.S. governors on Thursday his administration is preparing to issue new, most likely more relaxed social distancing programs based upon geographic risk factors. So he's trying to ease the whole country to limited action, which will cause millions of preventable deaths. So that's another case of a social mass murderer. Again, social murder is when you use policy to kill people. Trump is using policy to kill people. He always has been. He's just adding to his death tally. So we do have some more people watching. The creator of Dyson has some updates, I guess, in the sense that they're producing 15,000 brand new ventilators. Dyson has created a new ventilator to help in the battle. Brand new. It's called the Covent. Now, mainstream media outlets are calling it, saying the creator of Dyson designed a new ventilator in just 10 days. I guarantee you he didn't. I guarantee you. I will retract this statement if it comes out that I am wrong. But I guarantee you his team of engineers and product designers and all his other employees are the ones responsible for them coming up with a new ventilator in 10 days. Rather than however long it would take. You can't single-handedly create a device like a ventilator in 10 days. It's too complex. And in 35 years of a senator, in each of those 35 years as a senator, Biden paid women less than men. So, yeah. Isn't that interesting? Very interesting, right, everybody? Iran is calling on the U.S. to release an unlawfully detained, one of their scientists that we've unlawfully detained. Bernie Sanders is now live with his live stream. I'd recommend that everybody goes to berniesanders.com/live or continues watching our live stream because I'll be putting that up. It's actually live.berniesanders.com, but I'll be putting that up for everybody, so you don't have to worry about it. If you would like to stay with me, you can, and we'll watch some Bernie-ness together. It's starting in 5 minutes, everybody. I'll be right back, okay? Stay with us. To answer your question, Katie, I am certainly not surprised that Biden is paying women less. Let's watch Bernie's live stream together, everybody, and I will respond to your comments in real time. I think that could be a fun way to finish off tonight's stream. Is everybody cool with that? Okay, I'm going to assume silence means yes in this case. Tell me if I'm wrong. I'll be right back again. I'll be back when Bernie's live, or sooner, if I get comments. Comments summon me relatively quickly.
The country. We're going to hear from Dr. Jeff Zilberstein, who is Vice Chairman with the Department of Medicine at the Division of Critical Care at Southside Hospital of Norwell Health in Bayshore, New York. We're going to hear from Dr. Esty Shambleman, who is the Vice President and Chief Medical Officer of Sinai Hospital at Lifebridge Health in Baltimore, Maryland. We also are going to have some music, which will help us in the transition of the nature of our technology, as we can't go directly to our panel. We're going to take a little bit of a break for music, and then we go there. And we thank very much Alex Hebert, who is a lead singer-songwriter for the band Edward Sharpe and the Magnetic Zeros. And later on, we thank Lissy for the music that they are providing us as well. I just want to say a few words before we introduce our doctors and nurses. And that is, all of you are aware that on Wednesday, the Senate passed the largest stimulus package in the history of this country. The House did the same today. This is a far, far from perfect bill. And I strongly believe that this legislation, which is called the Coronavirus 3 stimulus package, will be followed by another package, a number 4, within the coming weeks or month or so. The reason is that there are many gaps in this bill that must be filled if we're going to take care of the American people. What this bill does, as I think many of you now know, provides substantial sums of money to American workers, and that is, it provides a substantial increase in unemployment compensation. And what it does is expand unemployment to cover people who have not historically been covered by unemployment. Over half of our people are not covered. What this bill says, if you are a worker, you are covered. If you're a gig worker, if you're an Uber driver, if you're working part-time, if you're a waitress, you are now covered. So that bill will provide the most significant increase in coverage that we have ever seen in this country. What it also does is, through a $250 billion allocation, it also, for 4 months, will increase the amount of money that people who are unemployed receive by $600 a week. And that is a significant step forward. What the bill also does is provide, for the first time, direct cash payments to working people and their kids. And that is, under this bill, most Americans will receive a one-time cash payment of up to $1,200, up to $2,400 for a married couple, and up to $500 for each child. Somehow or another, should not have been the case. These are only kids 16 or under. Hope to rectify that in the future, but that is the case. Furthermore, this legislation will provide substantial help for small business. We're talking about $350 billion provided in loans to small businesses. Those are loans that could be forgiven if these businesses do not lay off workers or expand employment after the crisis is over. So the goal here is to keep people in small businesses on the payroll. This bill also provides over $150 billion to states and to cities, many of whom are cash strapped right now because their tax revenue has significantly declined. This bill provides over $100 billion to reimburse hospitals and medical providers for lost revenue related to coronavirus. I think we'll discuss tonight how many hospitals around the country are being overwhelmed with patients coming in with the virus. Hospitals are losing their normal source of revenue. They are in trouble. We don't want hospitals shutting down right now. Now is not the time for that. And we provide over $100 billion. This bill also provides substantial help for childcare, for affordable housing, to help our veterans, and in many other areas. The goal here, simply stated, is in the midst of the worst economic downturn maybe since the Great Depression. Nobody knows, but we do know that last week 3.3 million people applied for unemployment. There are estimates that by the end of June, unemployment in this country could be as high as 20 or 30%. And the goal right now is for the government to make whole, to protect all of the working families in this country. And the crisis is that we are living in a nation where half our people are living paycheck to paycheck. Those paychecks are now stopping. People are being laid off. We've got to make sure that they get the help they need as quickly as they possibly can. Now, in that regard, one of the things that we are working on is to make certain that the federal bureaucracy works as carefully as it possibly can, as aggressively, as quickly as it possibly can. Under normal circumstances, getting out this much money quickly would be a serious problem. These are not normal circumstances. Far more people are applying for help. Many workers who would administer this program are staying home because of the coronavirus. So what we have got to do, and I've just spoken to the Democratic leadership a few hours ago, we have got to be as aggressive as we can in telling the Trump administration, do everything humanly possible to hire the people that you need, to get the technology up that you need, so that we get this money out to people who are in desperate need of that money right now. Workers, families, small business people, hospitals, cities, towns, they need the money now. Let's get it out as soon as possible. Later on in the show, we'll talk about how we can, where you might be able to go to learn more about how you can apply for the help you need. And one of the crises we have that we want to overcome is that many of the unemployment office telephone lines are not responding because so many people are calling and they're not responding to the calls that are coming in. The websites are crashing, and this is something we've got to work on. But later on in the show, we'll get you some specific information as to how you can apply. Other issue that's on my mind, maybe we'll discuss it with our medical folks, is we have a president who thinks that in a couple of weeks, so by Easter, the country should be back running. People should be going out to work. People should be going to all kinds of functions. I personally think that that is enormously dangerous. We'll get some expert opinion today. I think if we're going to beat this crisis, we need to continue social distancing. We need to do everything that we can to prevent the spread of this disease. But that's something that we will talk about in a moment. But right now, let us take a break. Let's go to the music, and in a few minutes, we'll be back with our medical personnel. And let me very much thank our music, Alex Hebert, who's going to provide music for a few minutes, and then we'll get back to our panel. And what we will do, we're going to hear from each of our panelists. We're going to engage in a general discussion, and we have the time to take questions that you might call in. So thank you all very much. Let's hear from the music of Alex Hebert, and then we'll get to our panel in a very few minutes. Thank you all very much.
Doing all right out there in your quarantines, and that you're keeping healthy and positive and courageous. This is a song called Stronger. And it's about, no matter what happens, no matter who tries to throw up blockades, no matter what failures, they all keep making us stronger. That's the goddamn truth. This is all I got to make music with right now, y'all. Oh, you're making me stronger, yeah.
All right, everybody. I think that was a pretty good first showing by Bernie. Bernie never takes credits for all of his accomplishments, and all those unemployment benefits he was talking about were 100% him. Feel free to keep commenting, guys. Thank you, Katie, for telling everybody that that was all Bernie, because it was. Touch my face again. Darn me. This is good music, everybody. Bernie's back, everybody. Bernie's back.
Let me thank Alex Hebert for the music, and now let's get to our panel. We have three panelists, medical professionals who are on the front line in fighting this pandemic. Jimmy Cortez is the president of the National Nurses Union, the largest nurses union in the country. Dr. Jeff Zilberstein is vice chairman, Department of Medicine at the Southside Hospital of Northwell Health in Bayshore, New York. And Dr. S.C. Chamberlain is the vice president and chief medical officer of Sinai Hospital and Knightsbridge Health in Baltimore. Let me start off with Dr. Zilberstein, if I might. We are hearing and reading about the fact that medical personnel all across this country are lacking the protective gear that they need to do their jobs and to protect their health. I think in Italy, dozens of doctors and nurses have already died. And what we're seeing in this country is doctors not having, and nurses not having the masks they need, not having the gloves they need, not having the gowns they need. We're seeing a lack of ventilators. We are seeing other basic.
Sorry about that, Katie. I fixed it.
Not being made available to hospitals right now, who are being, in some cases, overwhelmed with patients. Dr. Zilberstein, what's your sense of that? What's going on from your perspective, and where do we have to go?
Well, thank you for having me on. I've read the reports, and I'm equally troubled, and even more so. I think that we have to protect the people on the front lines. If there's no protection for the people on the front lines, we will spread it, and we will spread it to others, and we will get sick. And that's clearly not the best scenario. We've been fortunate at Southside Hospital and Northwell Health that we have all the PPE that we need currently. And Northwell has been kind of ahead of the curve in terms of acquiring these things, which we're very fortunate about. But I've been reading these troubling stories about how many other health systems have been really completely overwhelmed by the need. It's imperative that every health provider get the protection that they need. Otherwise, it's impossible to care for these patients.
So your point is it's not only a question, which of course we must do, of protecting the health and lives of medical personnel, but if we do not, if they get sick or worse, how are we going to protect the American people in general?
Absolutely. I mean, I've told my team this as well, because medical professionals generally are selfless. We run in when the fire is on, we run in and we try to save lives. I've told my team we have to be careful, because being selfless is being stupid. Because if we go and expose ourselves, we're exposing others, and then we're also exposing ourselves and our families, and then we'll be out for 2 weeks or longer or get deathly ill. So we have to be careful with all of this, and this all comes down to preparing and getting our medical staff the equipment that they need. That's absolutely essential. And we've been very fortunate at Northwell Health. Our leadership has been above and beyond getting the stuff that we need. But I've been reading these terrible stories of other comrades in arms who have been lacking the things that they need. It's horrifying.
And what we are seeing is hospitals and cities and states being forced to compete with each other for the limited resources they need, which is pretty crazy.
And that's where the federal government can come in, because I mean, you don't want one state outbidding another state, and so that's clearly where we need additional focus.
Okay, let me jump to what we'll do is, if you could stay on, I want to hear from everybody. We'll have a general discussion. We're going to open up for some questions from our viewers. Dr. Esty Shabelman is the Vice President and Chief Medical Officer at Sinai Hospital in Baltimore, Maryland. Doctor, thanks so much for being with us. Can you give us a sense about what's going on in your hospital in terms of how you are responding to the crisis?
That audio issue is on Bernie's end.
I'm having a difficult time hearing you, Doctor. Are you talking into the microphone there? No. All right, I'll tell you what, I'm going to go back to you in a moment, but we'll figure out what the problem is. Let me go to Zinni Cortez, who is the president of the National Nurses United Union. Zinni, thanks so much for being with us. What's your sense of what's going on?
Thank you so much, Senator, for having me. A frontline nurse, I am very frustrated and I am very afraid. Not because I am faced with taking care of COVID positive patients, but because I go there unprepared, unprotected. While we do have masks that are available, but it's not the right mask that's needed to care for the patient. And we use gowns that are not up to the level of what we need in order to take care of them. And it's really frustrating for all of us because as nurses, we do not have the luxury of picking and choosing which patient to take care of. We take care of everybody. We take care of all the patients, but we need the proper gear, the proper equipment to safely take care of our patients. And like what has been said before, if we get sick, there will be nobody there to take care of our patients. And just a couple days ago, our hospital was threatening to discipline nurses or even to fire nurses if they brought their own gear, because the nurses were using, we were using our professional judgment to see what we needed to take care of the patient. And so we were bringing our own N95 masks, and the hospital had threatened to fire those nurses who were bringing their own gear. They were looking to the guidelines, the preventive measures from CDC, and CDC had said a bandana or a scarf is good enough to protect us from the patients. And we know that's not right.
Did CDC really say that?
Yes, and that was, we were hoping that the CDC would be there to protect us, the frontline workers, and yet they failed to do that. And so we are really scared. We are really anxious because, it's like
that's disgusting. Everybody, the CDC is spreading misinformation
to fight a fire with a squirt gun. And why are they doing it to the nurses? But we will be there for our patients no matter what. But please help us do our jobs safely. We will take care of the patients no matter who they are. But we need the proper gear and the proper equipment, the proper training, and the proper amount of staff to safely take care of our patients.
Zinni, the NNU represents nurses all across the country. So what are you hearing from nurses around the nation?
nurses around the country has been saying the same thing. We do not have the proper gear. We do not have the training. We do not have the proper amount of staff. And if I may say, a couple of days ago, we were on a global Nurses United conference call. 28 countries, leaders from 28 nations coming together to talk about this. And you should have heard what the nurse from Spain and Italy was saying. And it's really heartbreaking. We are in a trajectory. We have not seen the uptick and the surge, and we are not prepared. The nurses are not prepared. The hospitals are not prepared. What we need as nurses, again, is the proper protective equipment, the right training, proper training, and the proper amount of staff.
Cindy, let me ask you this. Above and beyond the necessity, of course, of making sure that all the nurses and doctors have the protective gear that they need, what about the number of medical personnel available to treat the crisis? Are people working long hours now? Are they becoming exhausted? Do we have the number of doctors and nurses that we need to respond to the epidemic that we're seeing?
Right now, I think we're fine, but again, when we see the surge and the uptick of the patients coming in, it will probably be a problem. We have shortfalls in having unlicensed assistive personnel to help the nurses in the front lines, and I'm hoping that there will be enough of us to be there to safely take care of our patients. And we need the gear. If we do not protect ourselves, we won't be able to protect our patients, and there will be nobody there to care for them.
Senator, I can kind of jump in here. I've been overwhelmed because our ICU has gone up by fourfold, 4 times the number of patients we've normally been having to take care of. The number of calls I've gotten to help with coverage from physicians and physician assistants and nurse practitioners, critical care nurses, the gamut. This has actually been a rallying cry for healthcare to actually put the care into healthcare. I've been overwhelmed and inspired by my colleagues. I think that I've been overwhelmed by the amount of people that have jumped into the fire to help us take care of these patients.
So Jeff, what are you saying that you're hearing from other hospitals and medical facilities who need help right now, professional help?
Yes, so I'm very close in contact with all 23 hospitals within Northwell Health. We have been on the phone twice, 3 times a week. We're texting all the time. We're in communication. We're sharing resources. And so big systems have been able to really leverage that to really assist other hospitals. And so we're doing that really on an hourly basis, kind of allocating resources based on the need at the time.
Do you have a sense, and somebody else, I think we're going to get Dr. Shableman on in a minute, but Eric, Jeff, do you have a sense as to whether or not we actually have enough medical personnel, doctors and nurses and others, to deal with the upsurge in patients coming into hospitals?
I fear for other hospital systems. Our hospital system has been resilient because we're a big hospital system and we work well together, but I fear for that because if you're a small hospital, you have a couple of intensivists. This surge would have been untenable. We've been able to call on other colleagues to help.
Okay. All right, let me bring Dr. Let's hope the technology has improved. Let's bring Dr. S.D. Shableman into the discussion. Doctor?
Hey, can you hear me?
Much better.
All right.
All right, you're sounding great. All right, how does the world look from your perspective?
So our ICUs are also getting full, and we're starting to notice here in Baltimore that we're a little bit behind our knowledge of how fast this disease is spreading, because it takes us 5 or 7 days to get the test back. Everybody wants testing. Everyone who has any symptoms, cough, runny nose, sore throat, fever, everyone wants to get tested. And we need to be able to test them so we can accurately map where the disease is, so we can accurately, try to cut down on it. And the test is taking 5 to 7 days to come back.
Do you have, by the way, and we'll talk about testing in a moment, do you have the available tests for the people who want them?
So we have available tests for people within our network, but we're doing 500 calls per day on our telemedicine platform. We have 150 drive-through tests per day at LifeBridge, and we have 900 people under surveillance, but it's within our network. We'd like to be able to open that up to the public, but we don't have enough tests to do that. Other hospital systems in the city are doing the same thing. And there are some public ones that are opening up, but again, within 5 to 7 day lag time, that's a lot of time for people to wonder if they have the disease or not.
So are you only at this point able to treat people within your network?
Right now, we're bringing in, we have a pretty extensive network. We have 5 hospitals and multiple outpatient clinics and providers and practices, and if everyone within that we can refer to our telemedicine program.
Are you prepared in your location for the possibility of a surge?
We're getting ready. We're opening up an additional 200 beds in our 5 hospital system. We're converting entire wings to isolation rooms. We're buying ventilators and equipment as much as we can get.
All right, we heard from the National Nurses Union, Zinni Cortez, about nurses not having the protective equipment they need. What kind of shape are you guys in that regard?
So we're in extreme conservation mode right now. We have enough for our day-to-day practice, but we can see that it's going to run out in the future, and we're being very, very careful with how we use it. So because of that, we've had to limit visitors, for example. We're not allowing very limited visitors in the hospital. We've sent home essentially everyone that we can send home so that they're not using PPE, the personal protective equipment in the hospital. And so we have to be very, very careful.
So you're worried about running out of masks and gowns and gloves and all that stuff?
I think every hospital in the country is.
Yes. And what about ventilators? Do you have enough ventilators, do you think?
So at the moment, we're okay, but we're coming.
You're
up
exactly
with
right, Grace. We need shelter in place now.
Right
it's
now,
the only way to
again,
prevent
we're all right, but
enough pain and suffering.
China, we're coming up with contingency plans such as how to split ventilators between patients, how to stretch ventilators that were meant for short-term use or transport use for longer-term use, because people with COVID-19 end up on ventilators for a lengthy amount of time.
All right, and anybody who wants to jump in, please do. What are you hearing from your colleagues all across the country about what might be happening in the next week, 2 weeks, month? What are we looking? I know nobody fully understands it or can predict it, but give us some best case, worst case scenarios of what we might be looking at in the future.
Well, I think that the biggest concern is that if we're continuing to surge, we will run out of equipment. So the greatest hope that we have is that we have fewer patients come in. The way to have fewer patients come in is to continue to separate so that you're not going to get it. The fact is that there are quite a few asymptomatic shedders, which means that those are folks that are infected yet not feeling ill. That's why this virus is just so darn smart, is that it doesn't just kill you. Instead, what it does is it stays in you, and most of the people are fine or they just have minor symptoms.
All right, stay on that for a moment. Anybody else who wants a terrible, terrible virus, so somebody can be walking around without symptoms and they could be spreading the virus. Is that the case?
That's precisely the case, and that's why it's so dangerous, and that's why people can get falsely reassured, still have some friends over, still think that this is not an emergency, and they're not seeing what's going on inside the hospitals. They're not seeing the rest of it, and that's why I really thank you for putting a spotlight onto this.
I think one of the issues that we are facing is that in the hospitals, if the patient is just considered a PUI, patient under investigation, the safeguards are not followed as if they were positive. And that's a cause of concern because the healthcare workers could be the vectors. We could be the carriers and we could be spreading it, if we're not given the proper gear. So we just need to be cautious and we need to be careful.
to take that a step further, we need to treat everyone as if they're infected, because again, we have people who are asymptomatic and shedding. And so you can imagine the stress that puts on a system. You know, for example, we have 14,000 employees, and previously we were using, each employee was using a mask or 2 or 3 a week. And now we need to use the mask and the gown and the gloves with every patient in order to be safe. It's putting a lot of stress on our healthcare system.
I'd be mad too, Grace, if that happened to me.
What's going on in most of the hospitals, from what we're hearing from the nurses. That's why the nurses are asking that we need to consider each patient positive until it's proven otherwise. That's the only way we could prevent the spread. And yet, the people that are making decisions in the hospitals and in our own government, which makes me really upset, they don't listen. They base it on profit. They base it on the money and the stocks. It's not. These are patients' lives. Why are we risking lives? Not only of our patients, but of the frontliners.
Let me get some expert opinion here. What I understand, the most knowledgeable epidemiologists and experts are telling us is that we now have to be extremely aggressive in terms of social distancing. And not to be very political here, we have a president who says, well, hey, maybe by Easter time, everything's going to be up and fine and come to work, or not a problem. What's your sense about that?
Well, Senator,
Am I missing something, or is that pretty stupid advice?
With all due respect, I'm 6 feet away from the monitor right now. I think that we all need to continue to be socially distant from one another as best as we can. And we know that because of all the asymptomatic shedders, we all are at risk anytime that we're exposing each other. And so it's imperative that we flatten this curve so that healthcare can continue to function in the way that it currently is. We're continuing to be strapped. And as I mentioned, we have 4 times the number of ICU patients in non-ICU locations with a lot of people helping. It's been remarkable. Now, if we have 8 times as many ICU patients, now that's going to be a real problem. And so we continue to compound it. What we'd like to do is flatten this curve because we can take care of the patients we're taking care of. I don't want to have a situation in 2 weeks where it becomes catastrophic. Right now, we're handling it very well. We want everybody to stay safe and stay home.
Does anybody here on the panel think that it makes any sense to try to return to normal in the very near future when we have a major pandemic on our hands? Doctor, or is anybody want to jump in?
No, we can't return to normal. We can't. Like one of our colleagues have said, we need to maintain that distance. We need to maintain communication amongst ourselves because, it's the virus, like he said, it's smart. We need to protect ourselves, and we need to be smart about this. So the less of us we have contact with each other, the better off we are. We need to base our decisions on science and not on the stock market.
Yes.
All right. Anybody want to add any more to that? And I think almost everybody in the country understands that, agrees with that, except the person who happens to be in the White House, which is pretty unfortunate. And I should tell you that one of the things I did today was talk to the head of the AMA, because I think it's important that not only the AMA, but the other medical organizations, scientific organizations, get out there as organizations and to state what they believe to be the scientific reality of the moment and what people should be doing. This is not a time for political rhetoric. This is a time for science and for the American people to understand the reality of what we're facing. Any other? I wanted to just go back to the panelists for a moment. This must be an incredibly difficult moment on a personal level for our doctors and nurses and medical personnel. I have read that there are medical personnel who are now writing out their wills and wondering whether they're going to make it through the crisis. You guys have any sense of, well, of course you do have a sense. What are your colleagues telling you about this moment on a personal level?
I think everybody's scared. I mean, everybody's frightened. I think that I'm fortunate to be in an organization where we have enough PPE and we have enough equipment. Having said that, we're exposing ourselves. You know, we're running into the fire, and so having said that, 90% of my colleagues are running into the fire with me, 95%, and the amount of humanity, the amount of inspiration, the amount of this is a huge silver lining. Look, this is a pandemic. This is a crisis. There's no question about it. But my colleagues have continued to inspire and enlighten me on a daily basis. And what I see is humanity. What I see is just completely revolutionary to the thought process around healthcare not being about documentation, but about caring about health, caring about your individual.
So
it's remarkable.
From my standpoint, you know, I'm an ER doctor and I'm willing to take that risk and I'm willing to go in there and take care of patients. It's what I signed up for. What's a little scary for me and for you know, my community and the people I've been speaking with is bringing that home to your family, right? Bringing it home to your kids, or if you know, my kids can't see their grandparents for weeks or months because we're really worried about them. And so that's been really hard on families, and it's really hard on healthcare workers who are scared for their families.
So do you want to add anything? Yeah.
Yes. As nurses, we come to work every day. You know, we're so used to facing the unknown every day. But in the past, we've had the AIDS epidemic, we had SARS, we had H1N1, you know, we had Ebola. But during those times, nurses were allowed to use their nursing judgment. But now in this pandemic, we are condemned for using our professional judgment. Having to have a bandana or a scarf to cover you, I mean, come on. You know, we're not disposable. We're not a commodity. We are needed in the system to take care of patients. We are part of the healthcare team. And that's where our frustration lies. If only we can be given the proper amount of gear. Hey, come on, we'll do even 16 hours a day if needed. But we need to have the proper gear.
As I think you know, some of us have insisted and demanded that the president implement what we call the Defense Production Act. And at this moment, what we do not need in America are more t-shirts. We don't need more underwear. We don't need more socks. What we do need is masks. We need gloves. We need gowns. We need all of the protective equipment our medical personnel should be having. And we are demanding that the president utilize this Defense Production Act. He did today, after a lot of urging, in terms of getting General Motors, I believe, to start producing ventilators. But, you know, you'll recall that during World War II, we had companies, you know, General Motors, Ford, other companies produce cars. But on day one, they went from producing cars to tanks and to airplanes. And that's the kind of transition we need right now. It is unacceptable in any way, shape, or form. The nurses are being asked to put bandanas to cover themselves. So the immediate priority is to make sure that all of our medical personnel have the equipment they need to protect themselves and to protect the American people. That's an issue we're working on very hard. We're obviously, as a result of this legislation, getting well over $100 billion out to hospitals, clinics all over this country to give them the resources they need to buy what they need. All right, let me go now. Anyone want to add anything to that? Or do we cover it?
I would just agree. Nurses are on the front line, and it's reprehensible if they're not getting the protection that they need. In the Northwell facilities, I haven't seen that. I've read about that in other facilities. Nurses are the front line. They need to be protected, and it's reprehensible if they're not.
Completely agree.
Okay. By the way, I mean, there's another issue of concern. There are some hospitals I read today in Elmhurst, the Elmhurst Hospital, I think in Queens, New York. Yep. I mean, it's hard to believe 13 people died. Hospital is being overwhelmed. Do we have, and I don't know if you know this or not in talking to your colleagues, but do we have the hospitals located all over the country I worry that there are parts of this country which are really medically underserved. There are no hospitals. There are no doctors in various parts of the country. Do you have any thoughts on that? Are you hearing anything about that?
Well, I think we're all really concerned. I mean, I think that there are some hospitals that are being overwhelmed with the worried well that are coming in
Rural
because they've
areas
been
come to
exposed,
mind.
and then they're exposing themselves in the emergency department to all these other folks. And then there are other places where there's no, kind of building in sight where they can go and get a test. So I think that my hope is that we all look at this in 6 months, try to figure out how to better structure this and learn from it. And I can't agree with you more about the idea of listening to experts. I think that there's a dearth of that. And I think that it's really imperative for everybody to understand that the public health experts need to be listened to, and we need to go based on science and not based on hunches and desires.
Absolutely. Well, let me ask you this question right now. If somebody is diagnosed tomorrow with cancer or with heart disease or other serious life-threatening illness, their care is going to be compromised right now, I believe, because hospitals are overwhelmed with the coronavirus. Is that true, not true? Or?
We're already closing outpatient clinics and trying to limit the number of immunocompromised people that come into the hospital. We're doing everything we can to take care of those people through telemedicine and as outpatient, and in new ways. But, certainly this virus has the capacity to overwhelm our system to the point where people wouldn't be getting the care that they need. And we're working very hard to make sure that doesn't happen. And I'll tell you one other thing, Senator Sanders, is it's not just the healthcare system that needs a little bit of tweaking. There's a social safety net underneath there that, for example, if we try to discharge a homeless person who again, doesn't necessarily have coronavirus, but has a cold, no one will take that person right now. And they're stuck in the hospital. And we've got the same problems with people in nursing homes and assisted livings. And it's hard to get people out of the hospital right now to make room for other people because everyone's so scared, really.
Is any thoughts on that?
Yes, what we're doing right now are emergency cases only. So we have forgone elective cases because we are preparing for the uptick and the surge of patients.
What happens to somebody who's 5 months pregnant right now?
So we're still having deliveries, of course. That's not going away, but the experience isn't the same. We're limiting the number of visitors that you can have. That the husband can still be there, but the rest of the family essentially at the moment is stuck waiting outside because we can't take the risk that they're going to infect the baby or staff or use the PPE that we're essentially trying to keep for our frontline staff.
Should people who do not have the coronavirus but are dealing with other illnesses be nervous about walking into a hospital today because of the increased possibility of infection?
If you're sick, you need to come to the hospital. So we're still open for business. We are taking care of coronavirus. We're taking care of strokes and heart attacks and traumas and everything else as well. So we are continuing to build our capacity. But again, that's the whole point, is that we have capacity. And at some point, we have to say, it's going to overwhelm the system. And so we need to continue to socially distance. But we are still open for business 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Please come if you're sick. And please don't if you're not.
That's right.
That's right.
I want you raised, let me pick up on that point. We talked a moment ago about testing and the fact that it takes 5 or 6 days to get the results back now. My understanding is that there is work being done to greatly expedite that process so that people can learn within a day or less about whether they have the virus or not. That strikes me as being extremely important because you don't want people in the hospital who may not need to be in the hospital. Is that true? What's the story on that?
Just like I was saying before, getting people out of the hospital when they're in this 5 to 7 day window waiting for a test has been extremely difficult. So if we could have a test that could turn around in an hour, like our regular test, or 6 or 12 or even 24 hours, that would expand our capacity to care for patients.
So what do you do right now? Somebody walks in with the symptoms. You don't know whether it's a virus, a bad cold, whatever it may be. You put that person in a hospital bed?
No, it depends on how sick they are. If they're well enough to go home and self-isolate, then that's what we do. If they're sick, if they have a pneumonia or they're short of breath, then yes, we bring them into the hospital and then we test them and we test the people we send out as well.
But it will be, correct me if I'm wrong, enormously important to get tests where you can get results in a short period of time to know whether or not somebody can go home or has to be hospitalized. Is that correct?
Well, so, I mean, you can actually send people home without even knowing the value of the test, whether it's positive or negative, and just advise them to self-isolate until. We actually, in the state of New York, and actually at Northwell Health, it took several days. Now we're getting 24-hour turnarounds, and we're looking to point of care within the next couple of days. So hopefully soon, we're going to be able to get relatively quick, less than 24-hour results. And so that's helped us tremendously. We've really ramped up testing, and that's helped us a lot.
But you have testing within 24 hours.
For sick patients, for sick hospitalized patients, not for the folks that just want to test just because. It's if they're coming into the facility and they're sick enough to be admitted to the hospital, we have the ability to turn around that test very, very rapidly.
Yeah, and we're building the capacity now to do that. But for the moment, we've been dealing with the send-out tests that go to these national laboratories. So we're in the process of building capacity, and hopefully we'll have that up and running in a week or two. But right now, we're still stuck at the 5 to 7 day window.
Cindy, what are you hearing about the speed at which tests are being processed?
I think we have the slow speed, the 5 to 7 days for now. And the other problem that, if I may raise it, is that we do have healthcare frontline workers that have showed some symptoms, and yet they're being denied the test. They have to meet certain criteria. And so I am again frustrated because we have Hollywood celebrities, we have NBA players who have been tested, good for them. I'm happy for them. And yet you have frontline workers who are begging to be tested because they show some symptoms, and yet they're being denied.
And we'd like to get them back to work quicker, right? I mean, if we're waiting 5 to 7 days to get a test, we'd prefer to have a quicker turnaround so we can get them back to work if they were negative.
Of course.
All right, we have a few questions, I suspect more than a few, that have come in. Let me just start it off. A gentleman named Patrick Burkhardt has written, and he says, what is the best way for people who are at high risk to stay safe during this crisis?
Oh, I got it. Stay home.
Stay home.
Stay home. Wash your hands. Wash all of the doorknobs and those things. I mean, so wipe down the high use items. Don't touch your face nearly as frequently as you generally do, because all of us do. Stay home, and please stay
home. Give us some examples of people who might be high risk. Who is high risk?
So what we found is that folks with diabetes, high blood pressure, chronic kidney disease, chronic heart disease, chronic lung disease, cancers, and other things that depress the immune system, those are the things that are troublesome. We say age. Having said that, we successfully treated a patient who was 94 years old, and he's off the ventilator now. And we still have folks that are very sick in their 30s that are still on ventilators. So age is a risk factor, but it's not the only thing.
All right, let's be clear about that. I think at the beginning of this pandemic, there was some thought that it was really only the elderly that had to worry, that young people really were not in danger. That turns out not to be the case, and that's a word that we've got to get out. I think there are a lot of young people out there who are not aware of that. They think they are not high risk. Anyone want to say anything about that, Mike?
I would say that they're not high risk necessarily, but that doesn't mean that they're no risk.
They can die and they can become sick, yes?
Become sick, yes, absolutely, and they can die.
Okay. Next question comes from Layla Goring. Our question is, how can we support the medical community?
So going along with Dr. Zilberstein, the first thing you can do is stay home. If you're not sick, please don't come to the hospital. But again, if you are sick and you need help, we're open 24/7. So that's the first thing you can do. The second thing is if you're able to have access to any personal protective equipment, masks or gowns or gloves, and you're able to send that to your nearest hospital, that would be helpful for us as well.
Okay. More thoughts on that?
I have an appeal. If everybody could call area code 202-335-6015 and ask to speak with their legislator so that they can go back and work. Congress and elected officials can go back and work and write an emergency legislation that will be protecting the nurses and the frontline workers during this pandemic. Please call 202-335-6015 and talk to your representative.
Let me jump to a question. And by the way, let me repeat, Zinni, there will be, unless I'm very mistaken, a fourth stimulus package, because there's a lot that was in this bill. A lot was missed, and we're going to have to go back and fill the gaps big time, both from a medical and an economic point of view. People, I worry very much economically. I don't know if you guys are running into it. People who have lost their jobs, they're worried about how they're going to survive economically. People are living under incredible stress, which I don't think makes your immune system any stronger. So we're going to have to deal with the issues you raised, making sure that our medical personnel have the protective equipment they need, but a lot of other issues out there that have not yet been dealt with. Let me ask you this. This comes from Ashley Figgs, who writes, do any experts believe that the transmission will be impacted by the weather warming up? A lot of discussion about that. Some people think that the weather warms up, the transmission rate goes down, then they worry about the fall. If you look at the 1918 virus, it comes up again. What are you guys hearing about the impact that weather and humidity might have on the transmission of the virus?
I just think we don't know enough yet.
I would agree. I think we don't know what we don't know. This is there's not enough knowledge out there to give you a good response. And again, this is science-based. I mean, at the end of the day, we can rely on hope, or we can, look to the science. And I wish I could tell you something, but I can't.
So that's an honest answer. You don't know.
You just don't know.
Probably nobody does. I mean, this virus is not previous viruses, and we don't know that it will perform the same way as other viruses have.
Exactly right.
Here is a scary question, and and I know you guys are spending your lives right now saving lives. You're in the struggle this moment. But Jesse Hebert asked this question: will we be dealing with a crisis like this every year from here on out? Do we need to remain distant forever? In other words, I think what we have heard in this discussion, we've had a number of pandemics in recent years. This is the worst. But is there any reason to believe that this will not be the last? What does this mean? What do we do? And that's a depressing question, but I think a realistic question.
Yeah, and so let me give you an honest answer. The honest answer is, I think that we can be hopeful. This is not the end for us. I think that scientists have done an amazing job already, making a lot of strides. Northwell has already participated in a bunch of clinical trials, and already we're starting to see some effects of those. Mount Sinai in New York City is doing studies on creating other treatments, and then a vaccine will hopefully be coming soon in the next 6 to 12 to 18 months. Who knows? But there are a lot of people working on this. And so the hope is that not only with the medications and the potential vaccinations, but also the flattening of the curve, because we know how to treat it. And so as long as we don't have the volume of patients all at the same time, and then also if we're exposed, we're going to have antibodies to it. And so then our ability to fight against it the next time might be better.
All right, but Jesse Hebert raises the question. It is a depressing thought. And you're right in terms of science and medical research giving us increasingly improved tools to deal with these crises. But he is raising the question, is there any reason to believe that this is, the last pandemic? Probably not, huh?
Oh, probably not. No. I mean, clearly there are going to be others in 5 years, in 10 years, in 20 years, in 50 years. The last big one that was this terrible was 102 years ago. Hopefully we don't have these every 102 years, but they're 202 years next time. But the point here is that we have to be able to flatten the curve so that science can catch up.
Exactly. And hopefully now we have the brains to start putting substantial sums of money into globally. We're not the only country dealing with this. There's got to be a global enterprise where people all over the world, the best minds in the world, are working on long-term vaccines, long-term treatments.
And hopefully we don't forget these lessons in 6 months and 6 years.
I have a feeling we will not. But let me ask you this question. Very simple question. It's on my mind. Something I try to deal with. I was not successful, but Cheryl Strobino Vaccaro asks, what about people who have no insurance? Can they still be treated? So somebody walks into your hospital, hey, I'm uninsured or underinsured. I have a $10,000 deductible. Now the legislation just passed says that the government will pay for the tests. Doesn't say the government will pay for the treatment. All right, so what? And I have read there's some stories out there, people who were sick, they didn't have any insurance, they didn't go into the hospital, they died.
So Senator Sanders, I mean, I think you're right. I think there's some fear about that, but no one should not go get help because they don't have insurance. We don't ask about insurance in the emergency department for emergency, if you have insurance, we'll take it. But if you don't have insurance, we still see you and treat you the exact same way. And if you're sick, we will see you and we will take care of you.
No, I know that, and that is enormously important. What you're saying is anybody is sick, get the medical help you need.
Please.
The problem is that some people are sitting there and saying, you know what? This treatment, depending on how long I end up in the hospital, may cost me X thousands of dollars. I don't have the money. And while I got the treatment and I'm appreciative of that, I may be spending years paying it off. That's I think the concern.
Senator Sanders, if I may say, a lot of this could probably have been prevented if only we had if patients had early access to healthcare. A lot of these could have been prevented. If our patients were not afraid of going to the emergency room or seeking help and are not afraid of going bankrupt because of their co-payments or their deductibles or their office visit payments, these patients could have been helped in the very beginning. The symptoms could have not gotten that worse. So I really feel that if only our patients who are in the worst health right now had early access and had gotten care early on, a lot of these could have been prevented.
Well, I agree, and that's why, among many other things, I am a strong advocate for Medicare for All, as on the National Nurses United Union. There's a question from Tracy DaCosta, I guess for me, but others can jump in as well. What are you hoping to have included in future coronavirus aid bills? I think there are two areas that we have got to strengthen. Number one, we have got to make sure that our medical personnel, and that's what we've been talking about this evening, have all of the support they need to do their jobs, that our hospitals are prepared, that everybody in America understands that they can walk into a doctor's office, walk into the hospital, get the care they need. In my view, and I pushed for this, I was not successful. I think that during the emergency period, nobody in America should have to worry about a medical bill. You got enough else to worry about. So I think from a healthcare perspective, we invest in research development. We make sure that all of our hospitals have the ventilators, the ICU, the beds they need. That we also begin thinking, depending on how long, well, let me throw this question out to you guys. And again, people, I suspect the answer is we don't know. But if somebody were to say to you, how long are we going to be in this crisis mode? Are we talking about weeks, months, years? Anybody have any expert opinion on that?
So
I'm not going to speculate.
Jeff, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I'm going to jump in to say I don't know. And it's really going to be markedly dependent on the American public. So if the American public continues to run around and live life as normal, then we will be suffering for an extended period of time. So it's really up to us as a society how long this is going to be.
Well, that's a pretty profound statement in a sense, that this crisis is dependent on the behavior of the American people. And if we self-distance ourselves, if we deal what is enormously painful for all of us, not to be with friends, the kids not to be in class, the workers not to be at their jobs, all this is just from an emotional point of view, from an economic point of view, absolutely disheartening. But what you are saying is the stronger that we are in staying the course here, as painful as it may be, in the long run, that's how we shorten the period of crisis.
So I would liken it to chemotherapy, right? Nobody wants to take chemotherapy, and it's kind of terrible. But if it gets rid of my cancer, sign me up.
Right. Okay, but this is now something that every American, healthy, not healthy, with the virus, without the virus, old or young, has got to adhere to. We are in a way that we have never been before. It's easy to say we're in this together, but we are truly in this together. If I get sick and infect you infect somebody else, we all suffer together.
We're all in this together, yet 6 feet apart.
That's right. Yes.
That's right.
Okay. Other thoughts on how long this epidemic might continue? All right, no thoughts on that. All right. One last question. I don't know if we have any thoughts on this one. Honora Harbick writes, what would the medical professionals change about testing protocols besides having more tests available? Thoughts on that?
I mean, I'd like to see everyone who wants to get tested. Not necessarily because it's scientifically necessary that way, right? If you just have a cold, you could stay home. But I think there's a lot of fear, right? Again, like I was talking about before, fear of getting your family sick, fear of getting your grandmother sick. And if you could get tested and know that you don't have it and you don't have to be separate from them for the next 14 days, then that might help people feel better.
Let me throw this out. There is a thought among some people, which kind of makes sense to me, that before we return to normal, we might want to or might have to greatly expand testing. In other words, you're a teacher in a classroom, or you're a worker in an office or in a factory. You're prepared to go to work if you know that you and everybody else around you has been tested that morning, and you're quite sure that nobody in that environment has the virus. Does that make sense?
Well, so testing 2.0 is going to end up being maybe antibody testing, so serum testing, where then we're going to be able to say, okay, you've been exposed to the virus and now you're quote unquote immune. You're no longer going to be shedding. And so that's the hope, right? I mean, the hope is that we're not going to be continuing to expose one another as we get back to quote unquote normal life.
But getting back to normal life, might that mean that every day when I walk into my office or walk into my factory, I have been tested? Is that part of normal?
Well, it doesn't sound normal to me. I mean, I think that if you have a serum test that shows antibody, you've been exposed, which means that now and if you're not showing symptoms and you've been exposed, then it's unlikely that you're going to be a carrier. And so that's not happening today. My hope is that's going to happen soon. But I would agree that it's a little foolish to move forward without knowing what we don't know in terms of who's out there and who's shedding, who's infectious.
Right.
I will point out one thing that we don't know, that people might misinterpret Dr. Zilberstein's comments, is that we think, based on other coronaviruses, that if you catch this one when you get better, you likely have an immunity for some period of time. We don't know exactly how long that lasts, but if it's like other coronaviruses, it's probably not a lifelong immunity or even a long-term immunity.
Thank you. Yes.
So just because you got it before doesn't mean you're not going to get it again. Although it probably means you're somewhat protected for some amount of time that we're not sure of. So just be careful with that.
What I hope to see is a quicker turnaround of the test result.
Okay. Well, let me thank all of you, and on behalf of the American people, I think there is an immense level of gratitude and respect for the men and women in the medical profession who literally are putting their lives on the line to protect the American people. And you are the heroes and heroines of our country today, and we thank you all very much for what you're doing. And let me thank all of those who have tuned in tonight. Let's go forward together, and thank you all. See you soon. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, and now I believe we have some music from a band that I am familiar with, and that is the band Lissy. Lissy, thanks so much for performing.
Hi there, my name is Lissy. I hope you're all staying safe and healthy. Thank you to the essential workers who are keeping our society running, and hopefully the rest of you are practicing social distancing, staying home so that we can flatten the curve and get through this thing together. I am a huge Bernie Sanders supporter. I've had the honor and the privilege over the last many months of being able to open for him, but also more so to get to hear him speak. And time again, his message has been so consistent. So thank you to Bernie Sanders for all he is doing right now to try and make sure that all the working people are going to be taken care of. Without further ado, I want to sing you a few songs. I am just on my iPhone in my boyfriend's kitchen. I've spent the day gardening, so hopefully wherever you are, you're able to get outdoors. My dog might bark. I apologize. Her name is Olive, and she might make an appearance, but hopefully not too disruptive of one. All right, here we go. The night has to come. This
Hello, everyone. Sorry about the delay in coming back from Bernie's stream. We will see you all on Monday. Please like, follow, share, and subscribe. And again, we'll see you all.